I have an extremely special guest with me today, Mr. Eric Jensen. Today we're going to cover his story overcoming cancer and his perspective on what it is like to overcome challenges in his life.
In the olden days, if you had cancer on your tongue, we'd just cut your tongue out. And that next morning, my tongue was on my gratitude list. It was a good lesson for me to realize that there are so many blessings in my life that go overlooked. What I also have noticed throughout my life is that some of the things that were in my difficulties pile have ultimately come over into my blessings pile. They've taught me some real serious lessons about life, and that's one of them. What am I focusing on? When I first got sober, and I started to try to form a relationship with my Creator, and I was kind of like, okay, God, here, you take the alcohol, because that seems to be hurting me. I don't have any power over that. You take that, but I'll manage the rest of my life because I got power over this, and I'll handle all this. And then, things happen. The economy crashed, and I was out of a job for a while. Couple years. I had to surrender my finances. Okay, God, you know what? I'm going to need a job. And my career shifted during that time. And, oh man, this is really messing me up. This is for the rest of my life. I'm going to be different. These side effects aren't just going to go away. This is probably for the rest of my life. And I found myself focusing and fixating and kind of obsessing on that negative.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Beast vs. Zombie. I have an extremely special guest with me today, Mr. Eric Jensen. Today we're going to cover everything on his story overcoming cancer and his perspective on what it is like to overcome challenges in his life. Thank you so much for joining me today, Eric. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so to get started here, the first question I want to ask you is, what kind of advice would you give to somebody overcoming any kind of challenge in their life, big or small?
Wow, that's a big question for sure. There has been a few things that have happened in my life that have really rocked me, and the cancer being one. And for me, taking it one day at a time was certainly something that helped me a lot. Cancer, other struggles, if I'm looking at it like, oh my God, the rest of my life, it's really daunting. And segmenting my life and the struggle into a one-day process, a little 24-hour block of time, was much more palatable or compatible, and it helped me to stay present, and that helped a lot, because it's really easy to drift into that fear of what's going to happen, the things that are out of my control. But what I can keep control of is what I'm doing right here, right now, and try to stay focused on that and just take it one little bite at a time, basically. So that's proven very effective for me in my life, and with my struggle with cancer and with some of the other struggles in my life.
That's awesome. So I 100% agree with that. Taking things one day at a time, right? Even you have long-term goals, right? If you sit there and think about those long-term goals and all the things you want to do and need to do to accomplish those, it gets overwhelming.
Certainly.
It gets stressful.
Certainly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, right? Like beating cancer is another one of those things. And if you can break it down, like you said, one day at a time, little things add up to big things.
Yeah.
And it just helps you. It helps you not worry, right? Because like you said, and stay present. That's really a big deal, because that's the only thing you can control.
Right.
Is right now.
Yeah.
Right. You can't do anything about the past. You can reflect and learn from it.
Certainly.
Right. But you can't like dwell in it or
can't change it
or do anything about it. And then the future, it's imagined. You don't know the future.
We don't.
Right. So any way that you're feeling about the future, especially if it's negative, is completely imagined and is made up. Yeah. Right. So you might as well. In my mind, I always try to imagine the future in like a positive light and let it do its thing, right? Because I don't know the future.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, yeah, being present is huge. That's something that I've been working on more recently in my life is just staying present, taking it one day at a time.
Nice.
Because I always have a lot of things going on. I work a couple jobs. I do the podcast. I'm buying a home right now. Like there's a lot going on, right? So
Yeah.
life can just be stressful in general.
Certainly.
Right? So
Certainly.
cool. So you overcame squamous cell cancer.
Correct.
Can you explain a little bit about what that was like?
Certainly. So it was roughly about 2 years ago, right now. So December of 23, I had gotten sick and my lymph nodes swelled up, which is common, but then after I was feeling better, they didn't go back down. It stayed swollen. And so I was just kind of noticing it. I had mentioned it to my parents. In January of that year, my dad had a stroke. So our family rallied around him and that care that we wanted to be present for him. And then once he was out of his aftercare, he was the one that said to me, Eric, go get that checked out. And I said, okay. So I went to my doctor. They prescribed an ultrasound. I went for the ultrasound. They said, yes, there's something there. They sent me back for a biopsy. They took the biopsy. It came back positive for the squamous cell. And then the next thing was they sent me to the oncologist, and I went to Comprehensive Cancer Center at Siena, St. Rose Siena, Eastern and St. Rose. Excellent care I received there. They sent me for the PET scan, and the PET scan came back that the cancer had presented itself on the right side of the base of the tongue. It was starting to form on the left side, and that it had also migrated out into the lymph node. So I think the lymph nodes are the filters. It was basically doing what it's supposed to do. I remember the doctor also gave me a fairly positive prognosis for the treatment. He did refer to it as very treatable. It responds well to treatment. And so all that sounded very positive to me. And I know that sometimes people get some dire diagnosis. And so I felt really, it was still kind of scary, but I felt like, wow, this isn't too bad. And then basically it was just from there, it was just like, okay, what's the next step? And from there, I went and had a peg tube installed because I wasn't able to ingest nutrients through my mouth through eating. So everything was through the peg tube, which was a very odd and strange thing to get used to, having a plastic tube just hanging out of your stomach and then pouring nutrient shakes into the tube. And I had the tube for about 6 months. I was completely reliant upon it for about 4 months. I lost probably 50 or 60 pounds through the process. And I did 6 weeks of chemotherapy, and that was one treatment a week for the chemo. And then I did 7 weeks of radiation, and that was 5 days a week, so 35 total. And that process was, it started off with having a mask fitted to my face. It was a mesh kind of plastic that I could breathe through and I could see through, but they warmed it up, and while it was warm, they plied it to my face and to my head, so it fit really, really tight. And then there was a metal frame that went around it that actually fastened to the table. So when I went in for the radiation, I would lay down, get comfortable. They would put the mask over and they would fasten it to the table. So I was completely locked in, and it was just, okay. And it was about 10, 11 minutes that I was in the process. The machine would move around me, and once to the left and once back to the right. And that was difficult process. I was able to continue working for about the first 2 weeks, and then the effects of it, became too much, and I wasn't able to work. And I ended up being out of work for 9 weeks total. The side effects from the radiation It zapped my saliva glands. I don't really have any saliva glands anymore, so I drink a lot of water, and my taste buds are shot. You know, maybe they're 50%, but I kind of think they're not quite that good. And I also have some a side effect called trismus, and it's basically fibrosis, scar tissue that's formed on the jaw muscle and in the front of the throat here, and sometimes it'll spasm and cramp, and so I'll have to open my mouth or extend my chin real high to, like if you get a cramp in your leg, you got to straighten it out. Same type of thing. So I do a little massaging to help it, or extending the chin too. But that was something, you know, coming out of the cancer treatment itself and just kind of like getting through it. It was a real grind towards the end, and I did go through a period of depression, you know, some self-pity, and I found myself focusing on, oh man, this is really messing me up. This is for the rest of my life. I'm going to be different. These side effects aren't just going to go away. This is probably for the rest of my life. And, you know, I found myself focusing and fixating and kind of obsessing on that negative. And then I kind of just started getting depressed and really getting sad, and you know, and it took me a while to kind of come out of that and to realize that I'm cancer free. You know, the radiation killed the cancer. It's gone. I've had several PET scans that have proven that. You know, so it was kind of, for me, it was having to be conscious of what I'm focusing on. Am I focusing on those couple little side effects? You know, I drink a lot of water now, my mouth's a little dry. Or am I focusing on, I'm cancer free, I have a lot of life left to live? So that was a big thing to really be mindful of. And it's a good lesson for me across the board. You know, what I focus on magnifies in my life. You know, am I focusing on my difficulties, or am I focusing on my blessings? And if I really was to stack it up side by side, my blessings pile is huge. It's way bigger. But sometimes I get myself focused on those little difficulties. And so I have to be conscientious of that. And what I also have noticed throughout my life is that some of the things that were in my difficulties pile have ultimately come over into my blessings pile. They've taught me some real serious lessons about life. And that's one of them. What am I focusing on? You know, and I have control over that. So when I wake up, I do a gratitude list in the morning. And you know, when I first started the cancer treatment, I said, "Oh, doc," I said, "why can't you just go in there and cut out the cancer? You know, why don't you just go get it? And, you know, we'll have a little surgery and be done with this." And he said that they don't do that type of treatment unless they're sure they can get it all. And he said, where it's at, we can't get it all. And he said, Eric, in the olden days, if you had cancer on your tongue, we'd just cut your tongue out. And that next morning, my tongue was on my gratitude list because, you know, it was something I just never thought about. I just had taken for granted my whole life. But I started thinking, what would it be like to not have the use of my tongue? You know, I don't know if I could eat. I think I would talk. I don't know, probably not very well. You know, it was a good lesson for me to realize that there are so many blessings in my life that go overlooked, you know, that I just have taken for granted. They've always been there. And so the gratitude list helps me to be mindful of my blessings, be mindful of what I'm focusing on. And then I share that with a few people in the morning and make a connection in the morning to start my day. And a lot of them send me back their gratitude list. And then I read theirs and I go, oh, I'm grateful for that too. You know, I never thought of that. And so my gratitude expands and gets bigger just through that simple little exercise. And yeah, it's a beautiful process. You know, when I was first going through the cancer and I got diagnosed, I was a little bit, I was certainly afraid. And there was a part of me I can remember thinking, don't tell anybody, keep it a secret. Don't let anybody know you're wounded or you're hurting or, some of that old mindset that I had grown up with, and, men don't show their vulnerabilities. And I was like, geez, that, of all times in my life when I need some love, I need some support, I need some family around me, my mind is trying to tell me, my ego is trying to tell me, don't say anything, and it's just kind of a way that my ego seems to want to try to separate me, keep me away from. And, I was comfortable and somewhat anticipated the support of my family. I knew they would rally around me, and my recovery community, I knew they would rally around. But one of the things I didn't see coming was the recovering cancer community. The other people who'd been through cancer heard I had cancer, and suddenly my phone started ringing. And it was like, hey, Eric, we heard you had, how's it going? Hey, I beat it. I went through. This is what happened to me. And it was like, for me, that's God bringing people around me. That's God surrounding me with love and support and community and fellowship and helping me to not only see and feel that love and support, but just to know that I'm not the only person that's gone through something like this. So that was kind of a shock or a surprise, I should say, pleasant surprise for sure. But there is a community of cancer survivors out there, and we do pull for each other, and I think that's a really powerful thing that we have to share with somebody. Our experience. This is what it was like for me. This is what I experienced. This is what my mind said to me. This is some of the things that didn't work. This is some of the things that did work. But in sharing that experience, I think we strengthen and encourage each other, and that community spirit, I think, is something that is certainly beautiful to receive. And I think I have some sort of a responsibility, I guess, to try to share that with somebody else. It sounds like similar to what you're doing with your podcast too. So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of the gist of the whole process, and what I can remember off the top of my head about it.
Yeah, man. So that is an amazing story. Congratulations on overcoming, this battle that you've gone through. There's so many things. One thing that I really liked is you've become aware of what you focus on, like what you're thinking about, right? I don't know how many people actually think about what they're thinking about, right? And I love the quote that where your focus goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
Right. And like you said, when you focus on all the blessings or all the good things on your life, it multiplies.
Yep.
It amplifies it. Right. And then all of a sudden, like you said, now you're having these gratitude moments in the morning, which I think everybody should do. When you wake up, you should think about all the things that you could be thankful for and why you have a great life, the fact that you woke up with a roof over your head, things like that, right? But then you took that to another level. You shared it with some people, and it amplifies it. Mm-hmm. And that's also the power of people, certainly. Right? I think the power of people and the power of support is so important for all like we are social people, right? We all share and live on this earth together, and we're put here together. There is no reason to not, like, everything is fun. It's fun to have resources and do the things you like, but it gets more fun when you share it with the people that you care about. When you share it with strangers that get excitement out of it, right? When you are able, just that feeling of sharing experiences, it's like human nature, right? And it's more fun that way.
Absolutely.
And, it makes the world a better place, right? And that is, like you said, that's the goal of these podcasts, is to share our stories, right? I believe that everybody's story is important. We've all gone through battles in our lives. Right? It's called Beast vs. Zombie. We've all had zombies in our life, challenges in our lives, big and small. And everybody's experience is is based on, you know, their own level of what was the hardest and what was the easiest, right? And that looks different for everybody. And being able to focus on the things that you're grateful for, the reasons why we're blessed, the positive things, like you said, it outweighs the negative things. Yep. And so that's extremely important. So that's interesting. As far as like diet goes, right? You said you were basically getting sustenance from a bag. You said about 6 weeks.
The feeding tube was actually I had to have surgery to put it in, and it was installed, or I had it with me for 6 months. For 4 months I was completely reliant on it, and I just had a little milkshake and then just poured it in a tube, and it would just gravity feed, and I would just watch it, and that was the only nourishment that I really got. The only other thing I could drink was room temperature water. I couldn't drink any coffee. The pain and the sensitiveness, I couldn't have. The coffee that hurt. The coffee actually hurt. I couldn't brush my teeth with a regular toothpaste. It hurt my mouth. Regular toothpaste. So I had to use. I forget the name of it, but it was a brand that they had that was specific for that type of treatment. This is the type of, there was a mouth spray to help. There was lozenges. There was toothpaste. But yeah, that's what I had to use. Or I just went without. I just would brush without because, it was just too sensitive. It just, there was a lot of pain that went along with it.
So I never experienced any type of like the diet restrictions that I experienced. At some points, like I was on a liquid diet. When you get a bone marrow transplant, basically they kill all of your cells and then they give you new cells. It's not like they take out the bones and then put bones in you, but they take out the cells basically and put in new cells. And so it kind of resets everything in your body.
Yeah.
And during that period, there was times when I would just be on a liquid diet, and I love food. Like I absolutely love food. So I could not imagine for 4-6 months eating just nourishment out of a bag. So when you're feeding yourself through the bag, do you get full? Like, what is that? Or how does that feel? Like it, right? So when I eat food, right, it goes down, I swallow it, I start to get full. Is it a similar process to that? Or are you feeling it going through your body in different ways? Like, what is that experience like? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was a very odd experience for sure. I don't recall really being hungry. I remember feeling sick all of the time, but I knew I needed some sort of nourishment. I knew that, and they had told me they wanted me to take 4 to 5 shakes a day, and I could do it in the morning usually when I got up, and then I could do it towards the evening and so I was only getting 2 of them a day, and so then I started doing 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon or in the evening, and that seemed to help a little better. But I never had that satiated feeling where I felt full. But I'll tell you, coming out of it, I remember how happy I felt that I could eat the yolk. I'd fry an egg and I could only eat the yolk. I couldn't eat the white part. And I was just so happy I could actually swallow and ingest like real food, nutrition. And that's how it started. But it was kind of, there was a little bit of depression that went along at the same time with that too, because the things that I remembered, oh, that's one of my favorite things. Oh, I love pizza. I'm going to go get a pizza when I get done. I had a list. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to eat this when I get through this thing. And I started going and having those things, and I couldn't taste it. The taste wasn't there. So it was just substance in my mouth, which was just weird. and then a little depressing, like, oh geez, that doesn't taste, it doesn't taste as good. And another thing I noticed too is that what I craved changed, and I'm sure that was just my body needing some nourishment or some things, but I never had much of a sweet tooth. But in this last year, I probably ate more ice cream in the last year than I ate in the 10 years prior to that. I never was one to like be sitting watching TV and get up off the couch and go to the store and go buy, a half-gallon ice cream. But I've done that a dozen times this past year. But so I don't know if my body's just trying to, fill itself back up with some nutrients that I don't normally get, or just part of the recovery. But it seems as though I've kind of balanced out some of the weight I've regained, and it was a strange, and again, I don't drink, I don't do anything else crazy like that. So I had a real attachment to food, and I was surprised to learn how much pleasure I actually got from food. Oh, I'm going to go get a nice steak tonight, and we're going to go do this or that. And then I would eat it, and I'd be like, oh man, that wasn't what I was expecting. And yeah, it's I certainly learned a lot about myself through the whole process. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And one thing that my uncle told me once I had gone on the other side of this is, that I needed to accept that, like, I would, in some ways, I would never be the same. And I didn't want to accept that, right? And it is something that, just like getting cancer is out of your control, right? Yeah. So what's your favorite kind of ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
Yes. Dude, my grandmother's favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you speak a couple times about having some depression, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, right, you touched on being able to focus on the positive and gratitude. What, if anything else, helped you kind of get over those mental spaces during your treatment and helped you get to the other side?
Yeah, for me, that was my faith, and cancer was just another opportunity or experience to lean into God, to lean into my faith. There's been several things in my life that, I've been sober for a long time. And when I first got sober, and I started to try to form a relationship with my Creator, and I was kind of like, okay, God, here, you take the alcohol, because that seems to be hurting me, and I don't have any power over that. You take that, but I'll manage the rest of my life because I got power over this, and I'll handle all this. And then, things happened. The economy crashed in 2009, 2010, roughly around in there, and I was out of a job for a while, a couple years. And, I had to surrender my finances, okay, God, what, I'm going to need a job, and my career shifted during that time. And I remember I'd met a guy, didn't really even speak to him. We were playing on a sports team together, and we played once a week. I played for 3 weeks. So we just played a game of soccer together. And at the end of it, he said, Eric, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I'm unemployed union electrician. And he says, well, why don't you come work for me at the airport and finish up Terminal 3. You could do electrical inspections for me. And I was like, out of my mouth, I shot, I've been praying about that, And I mean, my prayer was pretty simple. God, if you want me to still live here, I'm gonna need something. And he said, well, that settles it. And I thought, wow, what do you mean that settles it? And I started working for him. I still work there. And then not long after that, I was in custody for my daughter, and I went round and round, and I had to surrender my daughter, and so it's just kind of been a thing where I had to surrender my life to my faith, to God, And cancer was another one. Okay, here, you take my health. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm willing to take the action. I'm willing to do what I need to do today. If I'm supposed to go for the PET scan, okay, I'll show up. I'll be at the PET scan. And if I need to see the oncologist, okay, I'll be there. If it's time to go to radiation, I'll be there. And so it was just a part of, for me, it was just something that, life happens, difficulties happened, and I see it as, I have two choices. Am I going to handle it all on my own and try to do it all by myself, or am I going to lean into my faith and say, okay, all right, God, what are we going to do? And show me what to do, and I'll do it. And that's been working for me for over 18 years, and I have a beautiful life today. I have a beautiful life, and it doesn't take long for me to stop and say, wow, look at how good my life is. And cancer was a minor inconvenience in the reality of it all. It was a minor inconvenience. I missed a little bit of work. I got some minor inconveniences with my taste buds and my saliva glands and a little tiny bit of pain. But, I have a long life left to live. I'm 56 years old, fairly healthy, and cancer-free, sober. And so I see it as, I got a lot of life left, and I've been blessed in many areas in my life, and have wonderful relationships in my life. And my daughter's home from college right now for the holidays, and she's in her second year of college. She's an athlete, plays college soccer, and I'm grateful for that relationship. And she was right beside me, going through all that, and it was scary for both of us, and when on my last day of the cancer treatment, you get to ring the bell, and I'm ringing the bell, ding, 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 and when we walk out of it, my parents had come that day, and my daughter came with that day, and as we're walking out, my mom's behind us, and my daughter's walking with me because she drove me, and she's got her arm on my back, just kind of walking me to the car. And my mom took a picture of it, and my daughter told me what she wants for Christmas this year. Dad, I know what I want for Christmas. Oh, yeah, what's that? She's like, I want a tattoo. And I'm like, really? You want another tattoo? And she's like, yeah, I want to put that silhouette on the back of my arm, from when you rang the bell and you beat cancer. And that's a big milestone, that in our lives, and certainly in her life. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I might end up with a tattoo too. That
would be awesome.
Yeah.
My sister and I, we have matching tattoos of the day that I beat cancer for the first time.
Okay.
We do. I have it. We have it in different places, but we have matching tattoos.
Nice.
So that, your faith has worked miracles in your life.
Mm-hmm.
From overcoming your cancer, from all of those stories, from finding your, being unemployed and somehow aligning with the person on your soccer team.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is a common thing. This is a common theme for most people that I interview, for myself in this situation in overcoming cancer. For me, cancer built my relationship and gave, like you said, I love that you spoke to it as an opportunity. Cancer was an opportunity, and the way you put that to really lean into your faith, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And when you speak to handing it over to God or to your creator, mm-hmm. or whatever anybody believes in, right? The power that does on the human mind is, it creates miracles, right? But also what it really does, and I was just having a conversation with a buddy on my way here today. It lowers your stress level. It gives you a way to stay present, to not worry so much about the negative of the future and be able to believe in some way, somehow, that this is going to work out, even if that's through a miracle.
Yeah.
And I do not believe in any kind of coincidence. There's no coincidence. 100% you gave those things to your faith and it came through on purpose because of the way you think. It's not a coincidence. And I mean, you, like you said, you've been doing this for the last 18, 20 years, whatever that looks like. It's not a, like I said, you're not the only one. Also, like, it's kind of, at this point, proven to bring you miracles at this point, right? And it's the same for me. It's the same for me. Growing up, I didn't go to church. My last name is Muhammad. My grandfather is Islamic. I don't study the Quran or go to church, but my dad taught me to pray when I was little. We would pray before I go to bed. We'd pray before we eat meals. And as I got older, you become a teenager. You think you know everything. And I kind of just let it go. I didn't lean into it as much. And then as I got older, I started reflecting. You know, I started reflecting on more successful times in my life and what I deemed as less successful times and what the differences were and what was I doing during the times when, you know, everything was going great and everything was flowing really well, and what was I doing during times when it wasn't, when it was the opposite and when I wasn't feeling very good, right? And what were the correlations there? And then I got cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got cancer, and there was an experience one time, and I talk about this sometime on the episodes, with a lady. Her name was Lisa Carter. I met her on the airplane because at some point I'm from Portland, Oregon, and so I was going back and forth to Oregon every 2 weeks to get a chemo treatment at the time. And so I would fly on the plane, and I would take that flight every Friday morning at 6 a.m. And so I was flying so much, so I made a goal to just have a conversation and get to know whoever I was sitting with every time I was on the plane, right? I was spending so much time. So at this point, I know all of the flight attendants, all the workers in the airport, things like that. So I just made it a goal and a decision to get to know everybody that I would sit by and spark up a conversation, you know. And it's an hour and a half, 45-minute flight. So, you know, you could learn a lot about a person if you ask us enough questions. And she prayed for me.
Oh, nice.
She was like, oh, wow. You know, I told her about what was going on. We had some similarities in how we thought. And she said, I'm going to pray for you. And this is not going to be like a normal prayer. This is going to be a prayer. And I'm going to post you on my socials. And you're going to get all of this support from my community of people. And she did exactly what she said she was going to do. And when we had that prayer on the plane, like, I got chills. I got chills, and I had never really experienced that big of an impact through a random person that I did not know giving me some positive words. And it made a difference on how I thought about things, and that was kind of the start of me kind of reigniting some kind of relationship with my faith, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just continued. Now I have a fiance right now that she has helped bring me closer to my faith as well, right? And we pray together, and that's been another. And like, again, I can't make up, or I couldn't have planned for it to all work out like this, right? It all came to me because of, you know, what I believed in, and it's somewhat of a miracle.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And like I said, I don't believe in coincidence. It's for the right reasons.
Certainly. Yeah. It's, I guess people could argue, oh, that's coincidence, but to me, it's God's guiding hand in my life. And not only do I see it, but I feel it. Like you said, you get the tingles, you get the chills. And when I share that with other people, they have had a similar experience. And they say, yeah, that happened to me too. This is how he showed up in my life. And, we have that opportunity. Are we going to go and try to do it all alone, all by ourselves, or are we going to lean in and be surrounded by a fellowship, a community, and how beautiful a random stranger invites you into, to share her faith with you, and then her community rallies behind you, and that I experienced similar things, and especially the cancer community, like I talked about earlier. And yeah, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It's undeniable.
It's undeniable. And it's awesome. I love this conversation that we're having. It's awesome that you can look at this in such a good light. Like I said earlier, like you looked at this as an opportunity, right? And I know going through it was not always like this, right? I experienced times. I'm a very positive person, and for the most part, during my entire 10 years dealing with cancer was very positive. There were some hard times, but I always was able to stay pretty optimistic. I had a conversation with my sister the other day because towards the end, I had another bone marrow transplant, and I got very negative. I knew it, and I was kind of honestly just leaning into it, and it was honestly a step up. It was somewhat making me feel better just to be angry at that point, right? And she was like, it was crazy because he's such a positive person, and during that time, that's not what he was experiencing. And so it was a little, it was like the end of this whole journey. And it was kind of like the tipping point for me. And I was just very negative, very irritable. And, it just wasn't who I was, right? But then looking back, I'm able to do things like have this podcast, like share your story, share my story, right? And look at it and understand the change in my perspective, and all, like you said, be able to focus now on all the positive things that have come from it, and see it in that kind of light. And so I love that you're able to see it like that, because I know not everybody is able to do that for themselves.
Yeah, I feel really lucky. I look back over my life and I see where my struggles were, and I see how those struggles benefited my life, the positive outcomes, the refinement that took place in my life through those processes, to experience helplessness, powerlessness, hopelessness, depression, all those experiences were through really difficult times, but yet they refined me, and I'm a better version of myself today, having gone through those difficult times. So, when I was a kid, if you asked me what I want my life to be, I want to float down the river, not to have any adversity. I want it to be nice and, sunny days every day, but I would have really missed out on a full life, having the difficulties, having the challenges, the struggles, having the skin knees, if you will, really brought value and purpose to my life, because now, just like you're doing, and you've asked me to do today, that I can share that experience with somebody else. And when we share that experience, our experience has new value, has new purpose, and to come along somebody else that's walking through that same struggle, that same difficulty, and say, hey, you know what? I've been there. I know what that feels like. And this is, and then let me walk with you through this. And, maybe let me pray with you through this, or just let me tell you my story and just let you know you're not alone. And so I would say that, when I don't know, I think we have a tendency to say, oh no, that's bad. Oh, he's got cancer. That's so bad. Well, there's a lot of good has come out of that. So I think we have a responsibility to determine whether it is, because there is some bad things. I have some side effects I'm going to deal with the rest of my life, but I also have some side effects on the positive side, how it's changed me and strengthened my faith. God revealed himself more to me, and my relationship with my daughter is even stronger. And there's a community of cancer survivors that I'm a part of now. And I get to say, hey, you can beat this too, I don't know. I love having a full life. I love the ups and the downs, and I wouldn't change it, not one bit. I wouldn't change anything. If I look back on my life and said, "Oh, I wish that didn't happen," there's none of that. My cancer was exactly what it was supposed to be, and who knows? Who knows what tomorrow holds? But today, I'm happy. I'm grateful. I'm blessed. And that's, and I want to live right here today. The circumstances of my life aren't going to determine my disposition, my attitude. They certainly do. But I come back. The rudder is my faith and my recovery community, and that keeps me centered. It keeps me headed in the right direction.
Yeah, having a strong reason why you do things or what you believe in helps you. It outweighs reasons to quit or reasons to be negative or, reasons that go against your faith and your belief, right? Yeah. And I think the biggest thing too is, like you said, right, there would be no sunny days. We wouldn't be able to appreciate sunny days without rainy days, right?
Exactly. And
one of the quotes that I like is the way to success is through failure, right? And through those obstacles, right? It's not avoiding them or putting them off or ignoring them or anything like that. It's going through those situations and being able to feel confident that the storm will end. You're going to get on to the other side, right? You just got to weather your storm. Yeah. One of the favorite examples of that is I think it's like water buffalo or some kind of buffalo, right? When the storm comes, they all stampede into the storm, right? Opposed to running away from the storm, they stampede into the storm because they know that the storm is going one direction. If they fly through the storm, they're going to get faster to the other side.
That's great.
Right? So that's an example in the wild, in nature, how, you just got to go through the storm and you'll get to the other side.
Certainly.
Right?
Certainly.
And so, yeah, I believe in that wholeheartedly. I think that it's super important to be able to understand that, challenges are going to come. And it's not, like you said, it's not necessarily good or bad, right? It just kind of really is real life and what's happening right now. And what we can control is our attitude and our perspective on how we look like it. And really what bad is just you didn't expect it or you didn't plan for that, right? And you are not God, so you don't know the future.
Yeah.
Right? And I always say no plan ever goes according to plan because, you can plan for everything, right? And things will come up that you didn't expect or you didn't know that happened not by any data or any facts. It was kind of I guess what somebody would say is a coincidence, right? Or a miracle or whatever that looks like, that there would have been no way that you could have planned or could have taken that into account when you were making these plans or whatever that looks like. And so you have to be willing to be a little flexible, right? And you have to be able to be a little fluid in what those plans look like as far as whatever kind of a goal you're trying to achieve. Because being stubborn does not help, right? And that's a lot of what you speak to as far as giving it to your faith and giving it to God, right? Because whether you you're taking a road trip to California, whether you fly there, take a car there, walk there, whatever that looks like, you still got there, right? And that's kind of how life is, whatever that vehicle looks like, maybe, I'll have to take a different vehicle. Maybe, I'll have to take a little detour to get there, and it's not going to go as planned. And being able to understand that has served me well.
Yep.
It's served me well. I mean, but it's honestly because we got this thing called cancer that we had. Nobody plans for cancer. Like, I don't go through life saying, okay, one day I'm going to get cancer. I better prepare for that.
Yeah.
Right? You don't think you're going to get it till you get it.
Right.
And so you're dealing with something now that's completely out of your control, that nobody would say, that they would want cancer. And you have to deal with it. Your life is on the line at this point, right? You're not just living, you're surviving, right? And so that perspective, I know for me, has made me like just more of a mature person in my life.
Certainly. Yeah, I remember when they asked me, does cancer run in your family? And I said, no, it doesn't. And I had mentioned that to my mom, and she says, well, you might want to rethink that. And I did rethink that. And I knew, but I had pushed it out of my mind, kind of blotted it out, that her dad died from leukemia. All three of her brothers had cancer. One of them had the lymphoma, died from it. One of them had esophageal cancer and was given 3 to 6 months, and that's 6 years ago. So in remission, fully living. And the other one is got his second bout of lymphoma currently. And so if it is hereditary, it certainly seems to be in my family. But I learned a lot about it, and the different kinds of cancer, the different kinds of treatment. I felt that maybe I didn't have that heavy of a dose of chemo. I think it was called cisplatin, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. But I barely got nauseous. I think they relied more on the radiation for the way my treatment went, which certainly, really the side effects I got from the radiation, not so much from the chemo. I didn't lose my hair, and like I said, barely was even nauseous. But I suddenly had a team of doctors, and that was reassuring, to know that I had, to me, the best medical attention that I could possibly get. They told me basically exactly what was going to happen, and it has basically happened. And now I'm in the aftercare, and I see my doctors regularly, and go through I have a CT scan scheduled for next month, and just continuing to monitor my health, and just be vigilant about being mindful of my body. I think a lot of times as men, some of the cancers, colon cancer or prostate, some of those cancers are very treatable, very curable if we are catching it early enough. But unfortunately, if it's very far advanced, it's a whole different fight, and it's a whole different process moving forward. It's not, unfortunately, it might not be, hey, this is how we're going to help you live longer. It's like, get your affairs in order, and that's a scary proposition to have to face. So I think, as men, we need to be diligent and get checked out and let our doctors know, hey, we want to have the procedures, we want to have the tests, run the blood work, whatever we need to do. But early prevention, early detection is certainly a huge benefit in the whole process of fighting cancer.
And for all of your health, right? For all of your health, right? There's a whole sector in health is preventative care now, right? And it's so interesting that in our society or in the world that it's masculine and manly to do things a certain way, and it's not healthy in a lot of ways.
Right.
I did a whole book report. In college. I was in an African American studies class, and we read this story. I don't remember what the story called, but the main character, his name was Okonkwo, and he was this manly man. And my report was on why all of the things that he deemed masculine were actually not, like, in my perspective, like masculine or like successful, right? And things like that, like right, not going to the doctor. It does not make sense, right? That is not healthy for anybody, man or woman, right? Things like having pride and ego, right, as a man, right? Like, oh, I'm just gonna, struggle it through and push through. I don't need any help, right? We all need help, and two heads is always better than one.
Yeah.
Right? Like a team support. I would be nothing without all of the support that I had from, like you said, your team of doctors that put me through all of these treatments that got me to where I'm at today. My friends, my family, my mom, the random support that I got from people that I've never met before.
Yeah.
Right? I had 2 bone marrow transplants. One of them was during COVID. And so the first one, I was able to have all of my friends and family visit me. You had to go through some type of protocol to make sure like you were healthy to get on the floor, to access the floor I was on, right? Because we're all like immune compromised. But I was able to see so many of my friends, my family. We were able to like play games, and they were able to bring me food, things like that. The second time during COVID, it was just my mother and I. She was the only guest allowed to come visit me the entire month, quarantined in the hospital. And so the support that I'm feeling at that point is a lot different, right? I'm calling and FaceTiming my friends. They can't come visit me. I'm sneaking my dad into the hospital so I could give him a hug real quick and then go back, and, things like that. So the support during that time now are my doctors, my nurses that I'm seeing every day, that are basically I'm living with.
Yeah.
Right? And without them, then, right, I'm not getting taken care of. They're doing things like taking my blood every 4 hours. They're feeding me. They're bringing me meals. They're making sure I'm okay. If I have an emergency or feel any kind of way, I can buzz them with a button, and they'll come and try and do whatever they can to help. Right. And so the power of all of that, right, without that, I'm not here.
Right.
And, I'm so thankful I have had such a good experience, or a good enough experience to get to where I'm at today. Just grateful and thankful for what that looks like, because, those people deal with those situations on a daily basis, right? That's their job. And, so shout out to all the health workers, all the nurses, all the phlebotomists, the doctors. I've had multiple doctors, even the doctors that couldn't solve my problem, right? I went through a very, I would say, like, not normal situation, not according to a lot of the data and the research that's done on the type of cancer that I had. And so some of the stuff that the doctors recommended, it didn't work. Yeah. I did my first bone marrow transplant. It did not work. I went through that whole month and went through all of that, and I lost my hair and a lot of weight, and it didn't work. I came out on the other side. We got a scan, and I still had cancer. And so, but they were, again, they were doing their absolute best that they could with the situation. And, like I said, it got me, it still was part of the journey to get me to where I'm at today, and so still extremely grateful and thankful for that. Even I did initially some radiation. The doctor she was pretty young. Her name was Dr. McDonald. And, you know, she had a lot of good energy because in all of these spaces, I'm always the youngest person. I'm always the youngest person because I have lymphoma. So I have basically kind of a blood cancer, right? At a certain point, it's treated like a blood cancer when I'm getting my bone marrow transplants, right? And so I'm in all of these spaces. I'm always the youngest person with the most energy. So a lot of times I'm probably like a breath of fresh air for a lot of the doctors and a lot of the nurses. I'm bringing in some like young energy, you know? And I tried to do that the best I could. I thought it was like somewhat like an advantage. And right, again, when it comes to being present, this is where I'm at, right? So I'm just trying to make the best situation with everything that I got right now and where I'm at because I'm not anywhere else, right? This is where God has put me.
Yeah.
This is my journey right now. And regardless of if I like it or not, this is what it is. And I can decide on how I want to look at it.
Right. Absolutely. That is the decision that we have to make, you know, and that's what we can do on a daily basis. You know, I really liked your story about bringing that positive energy. And I remember the first time I was in the cancer center waiting to go back. And I just was kind of, you know, some of the people were very old and some of the people were crying and some of the people were consoling each other. And it was just really a sad place, you know, that day. And, you know, and even sitting, you know, when we're sitting getting our chemo, I mean, sometimes it's a 4 or 5 hour process when we're just sitting there staring at our phones or whatever, we're trying to take a nap or whatever. A friend of mine has basically uncurable cancer right now, and he goes to he takes his chemo every third week, and in an attempt to bring a little humor, bring a smile, he brings those candy cigarettes to the chemo ward with him and passes them out, and sits there with it in his mouth while he's talking to the doctor. And he sends me pictures, you know, with them, you know, smiling and laughing, and the other cancer patients, and I thought, well, what a great way to bring a little joy into, bring a little humor, a little levity into a very serious, you know, space, and you know, and I love him for that, and I'm glad that we have examples like that to help us to see, you know, how to go through life. You know, it doesn't always have to be so depressing, if you will. But yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
During my cancer journey, I had some of the most fun times of my life, 100%. And my family can speak to that, right? Like, I was able to let go. I was in my second year of college when I initially was diagnosed. I was able to let go of a lot of my responsibilities and go home and spend time with my family. Right, so that's a positive thing that came.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was great times in these moments. So the last question I have for you, and then we got to get out of here, is what is the best advice that you would give to somebody? I mean, I'm so sorry. What is the best advice that you have ever received in your life?
Oh, wow. The best advice in as far as health, cancer, or just in life in general?
And it doesn't have to be one. You can.
Yeah. Well, I hate to be redundant, but being present, living in the moment. But I guess, and we've talked about it already a little bit, but just recognizing the fact that I have a choice in the attitude and the disposition that I bring to the world each day. And if my circumstances dictate that, you know, it's going to be, you know, ups and downs. And I believe that we have an ability to rise above that, and we can choose to even be happy and grateful going through very difficult times. And in doing that, we create an example for others to say, hey, I don't have to slip into that depression. You know, I can choose to also be happy or be grateful for, you know, the life that I'm having. And you know, like I said earlier, looking back on my life, the difficult times in my life formed me and shaped me and helped refine me to who I am today. And if I was to take those away, I would be a shell of the man I am today. So letting go of whether something is good or bad. It's so easy for us to make a judgment. Oh, that happened to them. That's so good. They hit the lottery or whatever. That happened. That happened. That they're so bad. That's just our judgment. Life is life, and choosing to be happy and grateful through whatever's happening in our life, and we have the ability to share that with other people, and in doing so. We strengthen and nourish each other. Our spirit is stronger.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, that's all we have today on this episode of Beast vs. Zombie. Make sure to go follow the podcast on social media platforms at Beast vs. Zombie. Check out the website, BeastvsZombie.com. 10% of all proceeds goes to cancer awareness and cancer research. Thank you so much, Eric, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Like you shared, everybody should be present. Be present. And, one of my favorite quotes is happiness is a choice, right? So make the choice to be happy, to focus on the things that you can be grateful for, right? So again, thank you so much. That's all we have today. Everybody have a good rest of your day. Be a beast. Awesome.